Who knows? Technology doesn't always make sense.
Good afternoon.
How you doing, Dr. Adams?
How you doing?
It's like here. Let's see, we have that speaker. It's
Do you have anything other than this?
This is it.
I could start out right here.
Yep.
We are already in session. Ms. Bell, will you call roll, please?
Ms. Fowler. Mr. Lane.
Here.
Dr. Robert. Present. Ms. D. Jones. Present. Ms. S. Jones. Present. Ms. Bell.
Present.
Ms. Rhodey Collins?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. So as you know, tonight is a special work session on school consolidation. So we will start with a presentation from Dr. Adams.
Good afternoon to the board and to the public. At this point in time, this is a follow-up to our last board meeting, and quite frankly, a follow-up to the meetings that the board held in February and March with emerging wisdom as we talked about the notion of school consolidation or building a better St. Louis Public School District or system. And so my intent tonight is to spend about 30 to 45 minutes taking my time walking through the presentation and obviously taking some questions from the board as we continue the conversation that we started almost a year ago. The agenda tonight is to talk a little bit about the present, the past, our process in terms of how we identified schools, the consolidation scoring matrix that the board approved at the last board meeting, looked at the schools that we are looking to close or consolidate at the elementary, middle, and senior high school level, look at the consolidation scores, make some recommendations, talk about the future, look at a timeline that will be recommended to the board and to the public, and obviously to take some questions. There is an appendix section that the board receives separate and apart from this public presentation that you have that is only for you to review at this point in time. While the agenda calls for present, first we are going to look at the past. The notion of looking at our past is really a reminder of what we own and what remains beyond our institutional reach. The board has had a great deal of conversation about thinking about what they are responsible for. And it is our part tonight to kind of remind the board and the public of what they are responsible for looking at as it relates to their governance structure. We understand and know that equity is a long-standing systemic challenge for this region. We looked at the notion of the two rivers at the last board meeting and understanding that upstream, downstream, how dollars flow to support regions in this particular community. We know that, and we are addressing it within our own system through our Transformation Plan 3.0 as one of the levers, if you will, for the transformation plan. But still there are forces that are still at work politically and financial investments beyond what the district can afford on its own. And so part of this conversation today is a conversation about the resources that the district presently owns itself. I want to, as we think about the past, talk about a little bit about the history of the district and in just a really small way. Part of what the district has been recognized for over a period of time is achievement in the area of education. Sumner High School opened in 1875, the first high school opened for African-American students west of the Mississippi. And De Pere, the first KG or kindergarten school in September 1873. So the district has a strong past. We're not here necessarily to focus on the past, but really to use the past as a benchmark for thinking about what we need to do in the future. As we look at the present, as I said, the district continues to actively listen and respond to our community. Over 1,000 persons participated in the Emerging Wisdom conversation in small groups and also in large groups, some 683 people coming to meetings, some 67 meetings across the city to listen to and participate. And so the board is honoring that process by continuing to have this dialogue and conversation. And as we get to the end, we'll talk about how the community will continue to be engaged. We conducted we heard voices representing almost every aspect or perspective within the district, from teachers, students, parents, community partners, and alumni to elected officials. The guiding principles from those kind of meetings that accompanied our consolidation efforts prioritize the recommendations generated from the visioning workshop, the notion of upgrades for students, a focus on the health of neighborhoods and an equity lens on all that we do. And that is what this board pivoted to when they approved the consolidation piece. The board challenged the superintendent to go out and speak to city department leaders, which we've done, and also to talk to alderpersons or elected officials, which we've done as well. And you have a report of those kinds of meetings at the end of your appendix. And so we have honored what the board has asked us to do by looking at all of this kind of information. And now it's time to kind of look at the recommendations that might be coming forward. Our process. It was a real deliberate process. Again, we looked at the scoring matrix, which the board approved last week at the last board meeting, enrollment and demands, building conditions, capacity, the neighborhood impact, and the special programs. What I like to do right now is kind of spend a little time with the details of the criteria and go over a few examples. Again, this is the document that the board approved last board meeting. 25 points for enrollment demands. We looked at the total St. Louis Public Schools students in the school boundary area as we looked at schools, the percentage of St. Louis Public students in school boundaries that who those who attended those schools, the percentage of SLPS enrolled who lived in the school boundary area who did not choose the school, the percentage enrolled who live outside the school boundary area and the review of 5 years of student enrollment data from 2014 to 2019. Should be noted, with the notion of a pandemic, we are not looking at the current year enrollment for this particular year. If we did, that number would be lower because we know we lost students as a result of those students not engaging in education because of the pandemic. Building condition, we looked at the FCAP score, which is the Facility Capital Action Plan score. And we looked at other factors like the year the building was built, the gross square footage, but all of that, quite frankly, rolled into the overall score. As it relates to capacity, 25 points. We looked at the school evaluations, evaluated based upon the number of students who were in the building based on the capacity. At the high school level, we said 75% was a cutoff that we looked at. At the middle and elementary level, we looked at 65%. And we provided scores that you see in a minute for those areas. We looked at the impact on the neighborhood. Mr. Lane made a motion that we will look at increasing impact on neighborhood and reducing special programs, which we did. And so that number went from 15 to 20, and special programs went from 15 down to 10. And so the adjustments made to each of these categories total of 100. So let's look at the first area, which is enrollment demand. When we look at enrollment demand, again, we provided percentage of SLPS students in the school boundary area. If the numbers were 0 to 40%, there were 3 points provided. If the number for number 7 out of boundary, and I'll go to that in a second to kind of show you what that number was, there were a total of 3 points there. If the numbers were 41% to 80%, there was 6 points. If it was 41 to 80% on number 7, item number 7, which I'll go to in a second again, it was 6 points. If it was 80 to 100, 9 points for number 3, and for number 7, 80 to 100 points. There was a maximum of 12 points that could be given. And so the notion here is that half of the 25 came from the boundary piece. We then looked at the 5-year enrollment from 2014 to 2019. And if there was a 0% or an increase, if there was no changes or increase, a total of 12 points. If it was a 10 to 20% decline, 9 points, 20 to 30% decline, 6 points, 30 to 40% decline, 3 points, and 40% or more decline, 1 point, for a total of 25 points. Now you see 12 and 12 equals 24. We added 1 extra bonus point for everybody in this category, so everybody got 1 point to equal to 25. As it relates to the next item, which is building condition, because there were FCAP scores, as I said, Facility Capital Action Plan scores, if the building was indicated to be 4 or 5 points, fair 10 points, good 15 points, and excellent 20 points. So those were the points assigned based on the score that the school received from the FCAP. The next item was an item of capacity. The school's evaluation was based on building utilization compared to the total building capacity. The percentage of utilization would vary based on the school grade configuration. 75 to 100, 25 total maximum points. 74 to 50, 18 points. 49 to 25, 12 points, and 24 to 0, or anything under 24, was 6 points. At the area of the senior high schools, for middle and elementary, 65 to 125, 64 to 40, 18, 39 to 15, 12, and 14 to 0 was 6 points. The next item was the impact on the neighborhood. We looked at 4 categories: data or specific support from the City of St. Louis Office of Development. Data or specific support from developers or elected officials will also be evaluated. That was taken into the consideration. Not just a conversation, but real data that would show that. The population changes from the last 10 years. That data is, and really that should be 14 years, because I was able to make some adjustment by finding data for 2014. So the adjustment there is for the last 14 years, not 10 years, and the impact on school closures to the overall neighborhood. And we rated every single school that we were recommending the maximum points in that area because we realize and understand that there would be a definite impact irrespective of what was going on in that particular community. And lastly, a total of 10 points for any unique programs approved by the board, any innovative programs designed to develop and test new instructional models, and special programs designed to support our most vulnerable student population. So 10 points were provided for that. This is an example of every single school that we looked at, and you see the numbers in red or the items in red. Those are the key items that we use to come up with the scores that I just addressed and alluded to. While there is much more information here than made up the score, we thought doing a deep dive, looking at everything about the school would be very, very helpful because as I indicated to before, it's about the score, but it's also about all of the information. And so while that information doesn't make up the score, it is impactful information to take in as we try to make the right kind of decisions as it relates to the recommendations. And so the elementary schools that we looked at all elementary schools, but the administrative team looked at 23 targeted schools that we looked at. We did not go through all 45 elementary schools to run the kind of score and give you a report like this for every single school because it wasn't necessary based upon our review of their data, at least anecdotal data, but we did a deep dive on 23 schools. The schools are Ashland, Bryan Hill, Carver, Clay, Columbia, Dunbar, Farragut, Ford, Frable, Henry, Herzog, Hickey, Hodgins, Humble, Jefferson, Laclede, Merrimack, Monroe, Oak Hill, Peabody, Shenandoah, Siegel, and Walbridge. In each category, and I'll go back a second, we looked at, again, the same criteria that we had the board approve at the November meeting to look at enrollment with a maximum of 25 points, as I said before, at the FCAP score, a maximum of 20 points. We also added the building age and the cost to renovate in that category, although it did not make up the score, it was something that we wanted to see and look at. Capacity, a maximum of 25. The neighborhood impact, a maximum of 20, and special programs, a maximum of 10. We also did a budget analysis per student, what the cost was to educate a student in that particular school per student. That is a per student cost where you see budget analysis and obviously a total. The schools we are recommending at this time. The first school is Clay Elementary School. And I'll spend a little time walking through this one or taking time on these particular ones since we are making these recommendations. Next to the school name, it includes the capacity. So Clay has a capacity of 385 students, and that's why you see the number there. The score for enrollment was 19. FCAT scored 10. The building is 115 years old. It will cost approximately $2 million to move it from the score it has now to the good area. Capacity 12 out of 25. Neighborhood impact 5 out of 20. Special program the reduction in population in that area is down 4,523 persons over the last 14 years. The budget analysis of the school is about $13,000 per student, and this was last year's data. That data has changed a little bit this year, and the total score is 51. You see the 5-year enrollment looking at the latest 19 and moving to 2015, 16. Dunbar Elementary is the next school. Capacity of 522. Enrollment number is 16. FCAP score of 5. Building age 108 years old. Cost to renovate $2.5 million. The capacity of 12. Neighborhood impact 15. This is one of the areas that has increased population over the last 14 years, 1,354. The special programs or considerations, 5. The cost to educate a student is about $10,000 and a total score of 53. Recommendation is to close. Next school, Farragut Elementary School. Capacity of the building is 390. Enrollment number is 19 out of 25. FCAP 5 out of 20. Building age 114 years old. Cost to renovate $2 million. Capacity 12 out of 25. Neighborhood impact 5 has lost about 4,523. The population has declined by that much over the last 14 years. There are no special programs in the school. A special consideration. Budget analysis, $7,000, $7,910, and the total is 41 as a total score. Recommendation is to close. Ford Elementary School, capacity of 460, enrollment 10 out of 25, FCAP 5 out of 20, building age is 56 years old, cost to renovate is $3 million. The capacity score is 12 out of 25, neighborhood impact 5 out of 20. It has lost in its neighborhood, in its zip code rather, 2,672 residents. Special program of consideration 5, $9,949 is the budget analysis, a total score of 37. You can see again the enrollment numbers are a high of 267 and 1516 down to 160 and 1920. That number is lower today than it was at that time. Next school, Hickey. Capacity is 400. 13 out of 25 was the enrollment score. FCAP 10. Building age 114 years old. Cost to renovate $2 million. Capacity 18 out of 25. Neighborhood impact 5. Again, it's in the same kind of zip code area, 4,523. Special programs of consideration 0. And budget analysis 7,910 for a total score of 46. Again, enrollment of 293 in 1516, a decline to 214 for 1920. And again, the current numbers are lower. Next, Monroe Elementary School, capacity 384, enrollment 13, FCAP score 10, building aged 121 years old, cost to renovate $2.4 million, capacity 18 out of 25, neighborhood impact 5 out of 20. The zip code has lost 1,857 residents. Special program or considerations 5. Budget analysis is $8,166 per student and a total score of 51. A high of 353 in 2015-16, and you can see a steady decline over the last 5 years to 239 last school year. That covers all of the elementary schools that the recommendations are being made for. At the middle school level, there was only one school that we looked at closely, and that is Fannin Middle School. And this is the analysis of Fannin as overall, specifically for Fannin the school. You can see that the capacity is 450, enrollment is 10, FCAP score 5, building age 113, cost to renovate $4.2 million, capacity 12 out of 25, neighborhood impact 5, zip code change in terms of population decline of 2,824, special programs 5, $10,575 per student is the cost to educate students in this building last year, and a total of 37. You can see that the enrollment at a high of 356 in 15-16, down to 187 for the 19-20 school year. Senior high schools. We looked at 4 senior high schools: Carnahan, Cleveland, Northwest, and Sumner. This was 4 out of 13. Out of the middle schools, it was 1 out of 8 middle schools that we looked at. For senior high schools, it was 4 out of 13. The details around the school's Carnahan, recommending that the school close. I'll come back and give the final recommendation in terms of what I will be recommending relative to Carnahan. A capacity of 500, enrollment of 25. We got maximum points for enrollment. FCAP score of 15, building age 17. Cost to renovate about $1 million. The capacity 18 out of 25. Neighborhood impact 5. Zip code change, a reduction of 1,857. Special programs of consideration 5 out of 10, and a budget analysis of $8,714, a score of 68. You can see that the enrollment had a slight decline from 383, 359, 361, 308, and an uptick of 323 for the 1920 school year. Cleveland High School. The building itself that houses Cleveland and Central has a capacity of 1,590 students. The enrollment, just looking at Cleveland building in conjunction with Central, is a 12 out of 25, FCAP score of 5. The building age is 83. The cost to renovate that building is about $5.7 million. The capacity of 18, neighborhood impact of 5. A zip code population changed in that area, although it's a magnet school, so the population is not as germane for this particular school because it is a magnet school that draws similar to it was for Carnahan as well. The special program, it got a maximum of 10 because it is a special program in and of itself. The budget analysis is 9,263 and a total of 61. You can see that the numbers have been 269, 306, 299, 272, 254, and that number is lower today than it was at that point in time. Next to the last school is Northwest, has a capacity of 1,000. The enrollment score is 14, FCAP score of 5, building age 56 years old, cost to renovate $4.8 million, capacity of 6, neighborhood impact of 5. The zip code has declined by 3,987. Population has declined by special consideration because it does have a special program, 10. The cost to educate a student in this building is $17,581. The total score is 40. You can see the enrollment was a high of 370 down to 196, and that number is lower today than it was last year. The recommendation obviously is to close as well as the other 3 schools. Last school is Sumner High School. Capacity of 960, enrollment of 11, FCAT score of 5, building age 110 years old, cost to renovate $4 million, capacity 6 out of 25, neighborhood impact 5. This area has lost 4,105 persons over the period of 14 years. Special considerations 5, because Fresh Start shares the program as well, and that would also close from that particular facility. Budget analysis is about $14,481 to educate a student from this particular building. The total score is 32. You can see a high enrollment of 358, a low enrollment of 205. And it should be noted that even the high numbers were already low compared to what the capacity of the building was. So when you see it declining, it has a greater impact when looking at it that way. These are the overall consolidation scores, counting the lowest scores to the highest score, looking at elementary schools with 37 from Ford being the lowest and highest being Columbia Elementary School. And so those are the scores for elementary. At the middle school, high school level, these are the scores in the schools that are listed here. Won't necessarily repeat the names of the schools again. You've already received them, but these are the names of the schools and the scores. The asterisk next to these names means that when I make a recommendation in a few minutes, it will indicate that these are schools that are likely to receive other students from the closed schools, and that's why asterisks are placed to those schools. Red indicates that those are the schools that we are looking to make the recommendation for closure. Middle school, same thing here. Fanning is the only one of everything in red, and then blue means that there is a transition that I will be recommending as it relates to Carnahan. And so I'd like to spend a little time here talking about really the future, because if the board and the public looks at this as a way of destroying the past, then I think there is a misnomer here. I received a copy of the tentative vision mission statement that has been worked on by this particular board. And there were some key words that jumped out to me that I think are appropriate for this conversation. One of the things that's in the mission statement, a new mission statement that you'll be talking about on the 8th, is this notion of being fully prepared. Part of what the mission of the district is to make sure every student is fully prepared. To do that, resources have to be aligned to do that, and the mission has to be driven for that to occur. Competency, making sure that our students are competent. Contributors, students who contribute to what happens around the entire world and the region. This whole notion of globalism, looking outside of the region of St. Louis and looking outside of the state of Missouri and looking across the world. And innovative, the notion of how are we going to be innovative? That is what you are writing in your mission statement, or looking to have the mission statement adopted to do. And then in the notion of the vision, it talked about the board being bold to make decisions, bold to align itself with what needs that students need to have, that it would exceed all academic levels, that the whole vision is around being an advocate, to collaborate with the community as this board has done since March, really since February, to get feedback. And part of the timeline indicates the board wants to get more feedback. And then also increasing educational experiences. Now, what you don't have on your packet, I added to this particular slide. Why did I add this particular student? This student's name is Jamal Burns, a St. Louis public school student who attended Gateway High School. On Saturday, or Friday rather, I received an email or a text from him indicating that he had graduated from Gateway High School and he was honored to receive a Rhodes Scholarship. If you don't know what a Rhodes Scholarship is, it is the oldest award since 1902, and perhaps the most prestigious international scholarship, enabling outstanding young people from around the world to study at the University of Oxford. And so in some conversations with him on yesterday from my staff, asking him what was the difference maker, he didn't talk about academics. He talked about the relationships that were built as a result of being on a debate team. Part of the recommendations I'm bringing to you, or will be bringing to you, is what do we need to do to make sure that our students are getting a well-rounded education? Not just on the academic side, but on the side of making sure that electives and programs are put in place to support students in a greater way. This is a way of recognizing him, but also reminding the district, reminding the public what our real mission is. This is what our mission is. And so the recommendations I will be making to you, as you see right here, are not recommendations about taking away anything, but adding the kind of resources that our kids deserve and this community deserves. And so I'll walk with them. The only recommendation that's aligned to the consolidation of schools is number one. And that is the recommendation to make sure that every single student will be assigned an upgrade specialist to transition them to the next school. The recommendations that I'm making will impact about 2,200 students in 10 buildings and some 299 staff people. And so part of what we have to do is to make sure that we are appropriately supporting them as they make this transition. So some of the kinds of things that we are looking to do as a result of this is increase all of our school site budgets. Thirdly, additional advanced placement and elective courses offered at every high school. The conversation with the student from Gateway who received the Rhodes Scholar was about a debate program that made all of the difference for him. Providing a full-time nurse at every school, providing a full-time social worker at every school, or a counselor, providing a full-time security officer at every school. That normally happens at the middle and high school level, but not at the elementary level. providing a full-time family community specialist at some of all of our title schools. Last year, 2 years ago, we have to reduce that number and have them share because the school sizes were so small. Develop and create a new K-12 virtual school. If nothing else that we've learned over the period of this pandemic is that our kids, some kids excel really well in the virtual environment. And so we want to create a high school or a K-12 continuum that allows kids to be virtual 100% of the time if they want to be. Not just the admin program that we have, which is a different kind of online program. I'm talking about a teacher before a kid every single day. In order to do that, a new environment has to be created, and we can't do that with the structures that we have now from a fiscal perspective. The next one, additional reading coaches at selected elementary schools. I get quite often asked by Dr. Roberts, where are we around reading? Where are we around reading? Where are we around reading? Part of what this recommendation will be to add additional reading coaches, or really we don't have reading coaches at elementary schools, but reading coaches at selected schools that need the support based upon the STAR data that you see repeated to you on a regular basis. And lastly, and I've had some conversation with selected board members regarding this, the notion of creating a paid internship program for all of our high school seniors. We've learned, if nothing else, again, through this pandemic, is that our kids don't need to be sitting in front of a teacher in a building every single day. So how do we create an opportunity for them to get educational experiences, which is part of what the mission statement that you'll be presenting next month or next week is about? What kind of educational experiences can we give kids inside of businesses? How can we make sure that they're getting the soft skills and the hard skills such that they can thrive and become lifelong learners? Those are the proposed upgrades that we are looking to put in place based on the recommendations that I'm providing to you. Again, and I'll read from my sheet in front of me. Ashland, remain neighborhood school, receive students from Farragut and Ford, continue to develop the CPN model, which is an innovative model. Bryan Hill, remain neighborhood school, receive students from Clay. Carver, remain a neighborhood school, receive students from Dunbar. Clay, close and consolidate into neighborhood and magnet schools. Columbia, remain neighborhood and magnet schools. Increase the recruitment of gifted and accelerated students is one of the few north side gifted, at least magnet schools that we want to try to continue to develop and support. While the numbers are low, most of the students come outside of the neighborhood to that particular school. Dunbar, close and consolidate into neighborhood and magnet school. Farragut, close and consolidate into neighborhood and magnet schools. Ford, close and consolidate into neighborhood and magnet schools. Frable, remain a neighborhood school, receive students from Monroe. Henry, remain a neighborhood school, receive students from Dunbar. That's not in the same zip code or ward, but students are closely aligned to that school. Herzog, remain neighborhood school, receive students from Hickey. Hickey, close and consolidate into a neighborhood school and magnet school as we move students. Hodgins, remain a neighborhood school, and it does have a theme that I did not add here. Humboldt, remain a magnet school, and also will be receiving students from closed elementary schools. Jefferson, and it is a magnet school, Jefferson, remain a neighborhood school. Laclede, remain a neighborhood school, receive students from Ford. Merrimack, remain a neighborhood school, receive students from Monroe, and continue to develop the CPN model or theme. Monroe, close and consolidate into neighboring and magnet schools. Oak Hill, remain a neighborhood school. Peabody, remain a neighborhood school. Shenandoah, remain a neighborhood school. Siegel, remain a neighborhood school, and it also has a strong ELL population. Walbridge, remain a neighborhood school and receive students from Hickey. That's at the elementary level. At the middle school and high school level, Fannin, close and consolidate into a neighboring and magnet schools. Sumner, consolidate and close into neighborhood and magnet schools. Allow current juniors to graduate from the school, which means that we will keep the school code and allow those students who want to graduate from that particular school. At the high school level, it should be noted that ninth graders have never been in a building, so they're not even familiar with that particular building because we've been virtual for the entire year. Northwest, same thing. Close and consolidate into neighborhood, neighboring magnet and choice schools. Allow current juniors to graduate from the school if they choose to do so. We will obviously survey students, so these are preliminary recommendations. Cleveland, close and transition, consolidate into neighboring magnet and choice schools. In my conversation with the Cleveland leadership today, I learned something new, quite frankly, that the that there is a possibility that the Naval ROTC program can be incorporated into another school that does not have a program. So there's hope that we still have to run down by talking to the Navy, but there is some belief that while the school will close, the program, the ROTC Naval program can be placed in another school that does not have a ROTC or ROTC program. Carnahan developed plan to transition school to a middle school over a 3-year period, allow students who want to transfer to magnet or choice school during that transition, allow current juniors and sophomores to possibly graduate from the school if they choose to do so, and transition 6th and 7th grade students into the building in 2022 and 23. Obviously, this is a primary recommendation or preliminary recommendation. A lot of work still needs to be done for the details of all of these kinds of things. But the recommendations are as you see before you at this point in time. On the 15th of December, I will be asking the board to do the following. Approve and to adopt the Superintendent 2020-21 Consolidation and Closure Proposed School Action Recommendation based on Transformation Plan 3.0, which includes the consolidation of schools that you see listed here: Clay, Cleveland, Dunbar, Fannin, Farragut, Ford, Hickey, Monroe, Northwest, Sumner, and Carnahan, although Carnahan will be being transitioned into a middle school effective with the 21, I'm sorry, I should have said 21-22 school year. One correction on the last one at the bottom. The 21-22 school year, not this current year. Timeline. Timeline is as follows. The meeting that's taking place tonight is to provide you with the recommendations from administration. December 1st to the 7th, immediately after this meeting tonight, a link will open up to give the public an opportunity to give feedback until Monday at 12 o'clock. On the 7th at 12 o'clock, that information will be gathered, forwarded to the board, reviewed by administration, and obviously can be discussed at the December 8th meeting. The board has made a decision that they want to visit schools, and so you have a document in front of you, or you should have a document in your packet, that you can select the schools that you want to visit on Saturday. I'm scheduling a time from 9 until 3. We could go to any schools that you want to. I have staff poised and ready to receive you. We will go collectively. The board president might provide some guidance for tonight, but I need to know what schools are priorities for you that you want to visit. But the intent is that we will visit schools on Saturday to look at anything you want to look at and ask any kind of questions you might want to ask. Again, as I said before, the feedback document closes on the 7th. On the 8th, there will be a virtual town hall meeting in this building that will be live, that we will take questions from the community from 6 to 9 through a chat, and then transition, or 6 to 8, the board president will give some guidance regarding that, and transition into the board meeting after that point in time. So it'll be a rather long night. They'll go through the virtual town hall meeting first, similar to what I did with staff when we did the restart, and took questions, and we obviously will monitor the questions through the chat and answer them. Either I will or the board members will if they're direct questions to them. And then we will move into the board meeting immediately after that. On the 15th from 6 to 9, it is my hope and belief that the board will take a vote for this recommendation. Again, I realize that it is not easy to have a conversation around consolidation, but I do believe it's the board's and administration's responsibility to make these kinds of recommendations. As I indicated before, this is not, I would ask that you not look at this as school consolidation or closing, but what are we doing to align our resources to better support our school? I'll go back to the first slide because I do think it's an important slide to close on. Can you go back to the list? The first slide. At the end of the day, what I am asking the board to do is to build a better St. Louis City school system. I really believe that the recommendations that are being made tonight have been really thoughtful recommendations, looking at a lot of data, having a lot of conversations with a lot of people over the last 2 years prior to the board even getting in place. Those conversations started. Those conversations again started again in January, February, with Emerging Wisdom having meetings. We paused it because of the pandemic. The board agreed to come back in October to have this conversation, and now we're at the point where a decision has to be made. I think it's better that it happens before the break because it gives us an opportunity to plan and make the kind of adjustments and transitions that we need to make as a district holistically. So at this point in time, obviously, I am open to all questions that the board might have.
I have a question. How will the public know, other than this meeting, how will the public know that they are going to be allowed to have input? Are we going to do some kind of, announcement in a, on radio, no, not TV, but newspapers or something of that sort?
So as we speak, it's being tweeted through social media. The St. Louis Post has a copy of we'll be getting a copy of the presentation to a story tonight. All schools are also sending out, the schools that are affected are sending out, we gave them talking points today. They met with their faculties today prior to this meeting so that they will be aware, and we provided them with talking points, and they're going to send something out to all of their parents, letting them know how they can provide feedback, letting them know that this is not a final decision, it is a recommendation. And so we have put some processes in place such that the most impacted parties can obviously have the wherewithal to connect with the board or communicate with the board over the next 7 days. So those are the 3 things that we've done to make sure that we are getting this story out. As I said, as soon as this meeting ends, it becomes live on our website. People start giving feedback. The Post already will be running a story tonight and tweeting stuff out, and we're doing the same thing.
I have a question about the Post. Is that the only newspaper, or are you going to be utilizing the St. Louis American, something that's utilizing the African American community?
Yes, ma'am. I apologize for not saying that, but yes, ma'am.
Are you going to print all of this? Will you be, I guess I'm asking, will you print all of this so people can actually look at it and see what you're talking about?
Everything is on the website as of the end of this meeting.
No, I'm talking about in the newspaper, not just the website. I understand that for those who are computer savvy, but for those who look at the newspaper, the St. Louis American, will they be able to visually look at this and examine it?
That is something we can entertain. We had not, quite frankly, but we can look to, if not all 38 slides, at least the overall slides that would show the elementary, middle, and high school and what the recommendations might be. I'll talk to staff immediately after this meeting to see how we could possibly get something in the St. Louis American. Their deadline, I think, is tomorrow, but I will see what we can get done.
And I do have a question about the cost. What was the cost, the figures on the students at the various high schools? Why did it cost so much to educate them there? I don't understand that.
So when you have a small number of students, the
Just
cost.
say for Northwest, for instance, you got
Yes.
$17,000
Yes, ma'am.
to educate a student.
Because there are only 187 students there, we still have to have the same exact staff that we would have for a school that had 300 or 400, such that they could be offered the full spectrum of English courses. So you might have 5 or 6 kids in the class for English 1, a small number, because high schools are certification driven. And so when I'm teaching science, I have to have a physics teacher, a chemistry teacher. I have to have a general science teacher. And so those are different certifications. Very rarely do you have a teacher that can teach all of that. And so that means I have to have 4 teachers for science courses. And I might have 10, 10, 10, or 20, 20, 20, or 40, 40, 40 kids to do that. And so the cost is the staff cost. And it's not necessarily how much the staff is getting, is to have extra teachers to provide the support for kids when you have a small population.
And I have one last question about Northwest. The building is 56 years old, but it costs $4.8 million to renovate.
Yes, ma'am, that's the cost.
So
That
why is that?
declined over a period of time. I don't have the exact, I brought the FCAP report to show, and I think you have a copy that's provided to everybody, but on my table, I'll give it to you, and I'll pull it up to see, to tell you exactly what what's needed in that particular building and why that cost is what it is. And so let me get that a second.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry. Sorry.
So the things that are needed in Northwest, upgrade the athletic field, 16,000, install window shades, 60,000, replace the interior bleachers, 200,000, tuck point and exterior walls, 300,000, install landscaping and irrigation, 80,000, replace the boiler, 150,000, replace the chiller, 250,000, 1.5 million for upgrade of bathrooms, 250,000 to paint the building, upgrade the drinking fountains, 50,000 for a total of about $3 million. So every school has and this was updated on 11/17/2020.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Adams, I do have a question about school closures and renovations and what have you. What about all the buildings that we have yet to do anything about? Let's say, for instance, we have Walnut Park right down the street from Northwest. And I pass it all every day and it's still there. Are we going to demolish any of these buildings and keep the land? Because I guess my big concern is the population will turn around one day. Right now, we're under, what do you call it, gentrification. We've been gentrified here in the city of St. Louis. And I know it's going to take quite a little while to come back, but are we trying to get rid of all of our land?
No, ma'am. We've been trying to sell some of it. I think we have at this point in time, and don't quote me, about 15 properties that are up for sale that we've been trying to sell. We have not, I don't want to use the word block, but it's been very difficult to get and I don't want to say the city, but I can't think of the name, the group that is responsible for historical property. It's been very difficult to get them to give us permission to demolish property. We have to get their permission specifically, and if it's an ITNA building, they automatically say no, because it's a historical building. So the only option we have is to board it up. One of the recommendations from one of the alder persons, and I put that on the last slide, is that we do an RFP for partners to move inside the building and use the building. And so what we will be looking to do as soon as the board says yes, hopefully to all of the recommendations, is that we'll put the building revitalization group together such that we could think about how to best use these buildings. It may mean creating an opportunity for somebody to use the building as a partner, such that the building doesn't become destroyed overnight. That's one of the greatest challenges we have. It is. It's not. I don't want to walk away and make anybody believe that it's not. It is a real challenge for us to do that. So one of the strategies this year will be to try to get the building occupied to be used by some partner that we agree to and the board approves. And we have gotten some good support from alderpersons, especially at the Northwest facility, for that to occur. I've been in constant conversations with the alderwoman, and she's poised at this point to have a partner occupy the building based on the approval of an MOU with groups. I think Mr. St. Omer right now is reviewing an MOU right now relative to that building.
Dr. Adams, with my first question is just around understanding. So looking at Cleveland, a couple of questions. One, how was the FCAP calculated since it's joined to another school? Is it?
Yeah, we kind of look at the overall capacity of the whole building, quite frankly. It would be our intent, if Cleveland is moved out of that building, that we can expand Central VPA. We have more than enough applicants who want to go to that particular school. I don't want to say it's so-called one, the kind of nuance, quite frankly. Totally about 700 kids in the building, totally, when you add both of the buildings together. And so that's about 700, which is about 50% of the 1,500, because it's such a large encompassing building. But even with adding it together, you can see that it's still not at capacity.
Dr. Adams,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question for you. So just to make sure that I understand this correctly and looking at this consolidation plan, Carnahan High School would be the high school that would be the feeder school for students from Cleveland and Northwest and Sumner?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Do I have the correct understanding? No, so Carnahan is slated to close. So the feeder school that these students would be slated to go to is,
Carnahan presently is a high school, so it receives students.
right,
And so it is a magnet school, so kids select to go to that particular school. It doesn't have a natural feeder.
right. So I guess in looking at this map that you provided to us,
Yes,
I was
yes.
trying to locate, and forgive me if I've missed it, a high school in North St. Louis that our students would have access to.
So all of the kids coming from high schools would have access to any magnet school. So the intent is at Sumner High School, at Northwest High School, those students will get first options to go to a magnet school.
Right, but I don't see one in North St. Louis for them at all an option. So they would have to travel across the city south or somewhere in the central west end to go to school?
At this point in time, Northwest is already considered a magnet school that gets about 6 or 7 buses. And so the majority of the kids there don't even live in that area. For Sumner as well, those students are already traveling. I think there are 8 or 9 buses for Sumner as well. So I don't see them traveling north, south, east, or west as being a problem for high school students. For Sean, is the high school that would still be considered north. If the kid wanted to stay north, Vashon would be the high school that would still be considered north.
Okay, but that would be the only option that's north for our students.
Yes, ma'am.
And then in South St. Louis, do you know the numbers of high schools that are accessible to those kids?
The only one that is a neighborhood school, all the rest of them are magnet schools. So Metro would be considered central. CSMB would be considered, I guess, south. The other schools would be, I don't have my list in front of me.
We have Soldan.
Sodan would be considered
North.
south, if you want to look at it, south or central. I'm sorry, north, it would be north, I'm sorry, it would be north.
Okay.
This is Natalie. I had a follow-up on that, actually.
Go ahead, Natalie.
So my question was surrounding the impact on increased bus ride times. When we're looking at shifting students from one school to another, have we actually looked at what that looks like for them? What time do they have to get up? What time do they get home? Is that going to leave them adequate time since we are taking schools out of their neighborhood?
Could somebody repeat the question? I didn't hear it clearly.
It was a little quiet for me too, Natalie, so if you need
Sure.
to restate, go right ahead.
Can you hear?
I think what she's asking is, have you looked at transportation times comparing from the schools that they're currently at to the schools that they'd be going to? How would that affect their time of leaving in the morning and their time of arriving home?
So at this point in time, we have not had any conversations with any kids. And so we won't know until they select schools. Once they select schools, then obviously we can look at all of that kind of data. But at this point in time, we don't have any of that kind of data, but we have schools on different tiers. So the 8 o'clock, the 7:30 time, they could select the school based upon a number of different factors. But at this point in time, we've not had any conversation with any high school student to best determine what school they might go to and how it might impact them. But I want to acknowledge the fact that our high school students go across the entire city on a regular basis. We only have 2 neighborhood schools. Those 2 neighborhood schools are Roosevelt and Vashon. All other schools, and I apologize, Sumner, all other schools have a magnet component. Even Northwest had a magnet component that allowed it to increase enrollment, but all the other schools are magnet schools.
I was actually speaking to schools at all levels, the elementary schools and the middle schools as well. since those do have established consolidation plans where one school will join another?
Yes, a good question. We have not, because we want to give parents the option to select if they want to stay in a neighborhood school or look to go to a magnet school, meaning a school that's in a zip code or close to where they live. We have contemplated the notion, Ms. Val, of reducing the mile radius for transportation to a lower number for those kids that are looking to move. It was in my original recommendation that you had. I pulled it back because I don't want to make a recommendation I can't assure happens, but that is our intent, to look at that on a case-by-case basis to try to provide transportation services to kids who are being moved from a school such that they can not have the impact of being so far away.
Thank you. And my last question on that is, how do we determine our boundary maps that determine which neighborhood schools kids go to? And are we going to be redrawing those for the 2021 school year and after?
That is an excellent question, and the answer to the question is 100% yes. I think the board president and I had a conversation, and this is part A. The part B piece is going to obviously have to come back to be a conversation around redrawing boundary lines, but we couldn't do that until the board makes some recommendations, until the board accepts the recommendations or looks at approval of this.
Dr. Adams, as we look at this plan, is there any consideration being given to start times? Because we've had a lot of discussion around start times, and would this be the opportunity to consider the time school starts?
We will have enough time to, if the board approves this before Christmas, to look at the option of changing starts time. I know that we had another thing we have to look at is our transportation vendors' ability to be nimble to do that. And without getting into too much details regarding that, I think that is one of the things that would likely be on the table for us to look at if we can get a recommendation as soon as possible. Yes. So the answer to the question is yes. We were looking at it last year. We walked away because in March, obviously the pandemic occurred.
Dr. Adams, I have a question. Schools like Northwest, that is a magnet school and has a specific focus like law.
Mhm.
How are we planning to move that
Yes.
law focus to other schools?
Yes, we have
Okay.
already had some conversation about schools like Sumner, Northwest, and Carnahan that have Carnahan more than anybody else with a Project Lead the Way program to incorporate that into another school. So yes, our CT component, as a matter of fact, I've already gotten recommendations, and schools are likely going to be fighting is the wrong word, but wanting to have that program in their school. So the notion of having more electives, that is part of what the recommendation would be, because electives will be leaving some schools that are being underutilized to go to schools that have more students such that they can be maximally used.
I have another suggestion regarding the community. I'm not sure if it's going to be practical for you to put up the whole presentation in the papers. I just don't think that's going to happen. But I think that if we put something in the paper, we should put our link to, our website in the paper, St. Louis American and the Post, and even maybe make sure that they have that link in their online versions as well, so that when they click on that link, it takes them to the St. Louis Public School site and this presentation.
Yeah, somebody did give me some feedback to tell me that it will be in the St. Louis American. I'm not sure how much, Ms. Jones, but I did get a note that it will be in the St. Louis American. We'll have some conversations because the board won't make a decision till the 15th. So if some portion of this in a much more detailed way can't get in the Post by this Thursday, there's a strong possibility of being in the Post by next Thursday.
Dr. Adams, you talked about communicating with community members, and not to put another log on the charter public fire, but looking at, for example, Ford and Laclede, closing Ford and keeping Laclede is predicated on a lot of, if not all of those students going to Laclede, right? Has there been conversation with charter school association entities to make sure that there's not another school that just plops down? Because if that does happen, we could lose that population, and then we'd be the position that Ford is in now, we'd be in the position with Laclede. Who knows when later?
Excellent question, and I know the board president and I have had some conversation. I'm sure she's going to likely make a recommendation if this is approved. Yes, part of the next part of a conversation will be, well, let me back up. Yes, I have had some preliminary conversations with the group that we're working with to try to come up with a unified city plan such that we're not going to have multiple schools every single year come. That being said, there's nothing we can do to stop that from happening, Mr. Lane, because there's no law
Yeah.
that allows it. So through a cooperative agreement, I am hoping and believing that the efforts that have been underway for the last year will result in some kind of collaboration around not having too many schools. But in terms of controlling it, the answer is no, we cannot. But yes,
Understandable.
conversations have. Because I know that a charter is considering closing itself in the same area, which would mean that we can't have no schools in that area.
Understood. And then one more question before I yield about bus routes. Do we have, if we were to move forward with these consolidations, do we have an anticipated impact on what bus routes might be? And
No, sir, not until.
seeing as that's a big part of our
Yeah,
budget.
you're 100% correct. I would suspect that it's less. Right now, the transportation cost for these schools is $1.6 million. That's what the transportation cost is. Utility cost is $1.4 million. And so I am hopeful that we will reduce the transportation costs by some consolidation, but I can't guarantee that right now. I would doubt very seriously if it goes up. We've done this before and it's reduced our overall budget, but I think the wild card relative to transportation is just that, a wild card, until we can actually know that Calvin Adams has agreed to go to their school. There may be a route that already runs to take that kid across town to another place because we have buses all over the city, some 272 routes. So I'm believing, Mr. Lang, based on our previous history, that the cost will not be prohibitive for us, meaning it will go up.
Dr. Adams, what type of advocacy does the district need in order to preempt the charter schools being allowed to start in a school district that's fully accredited?
Legislative action by the state legislators. Right now, Kansas City, St. Louis, irrespective of accreditation, the law was passed such that any charter school can open in the city of St. Louis or Kansas City, irrespective of the district being accredited, provisionally, fully, or unaccredited. In Normandy and Riverview and Hickman Mills, the three districts, if my memory is correct, that are provisionally accredited, if the district became fully accredited, then charters cannot open there. But in Kansas City and St. Louis, irrespective of the status of accreditation, charter schools can be put in place. So legislation, the bottom line is legislation, connecting with legislators to get them to change to the present law.
Dr. Adams, just one last question for me. When we talked about the proposed upgrade plans, and in number 3, it says increase all school site budgets. Are the school site budgets increased because we're transferring costs from these closed schools to the new school? Or is there a real dollar savings from this? Because I can imagine when those buildings are closed, we're still going to have some fixed costs because they still exist. So are these school site budgets increased just because we're transferring costs to those schools, or there's a real measurable dollar increase, a variable increase in those school budgets?
We will have the ability to increase the allocations that go to schools. We'll have more dollars. So we'll have the ability to increase the allocation. So let's say it's 0.3% right now. We have the ability to change it to 0.5% and increase it across all schools, such that they have more discretionary dollars in their own budgets to support the kind of things that they want to see happen in their buildings.
So there will be additional discretionary dollars?
Yes, that is exactly right, discretionary dollars. Not just the cost for more staff, but the discretionary dollars.
Okay.
Thank you for asking it that way, because that's exactly what we intend.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Adams, a couple of years ago, I guess, or when we first came back on board, there were the CPN schools. And I believe Merrimack is
And
one of those
Ashland.
schools.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm noticing here that there was a population lost around that school as well of almost 1,800 people. But they are still, but I see the budget analysis is pretty low, 7,000 almost. So why are we continuing with this CPN program? Is that successful? Why are we utilizing this model right now?
So this is year 2 of the program. It is quite frankly a model to create some more innovation and give the faculty and staff more autonomy around how they spend their dollars and how they support students. The data is not clear right now because last year we had no testing. Last year was the very first year. This is the second year of it, and we've been in a pandemic the entire year. So from a data perspective, looking at raw academic data is very difficult because we don't have a lot of data across the entire district other than STAR scores. So in terms of the leadership model and the buy-in from faculty and staff, yes, it seems to be generating a lot of, I don't want to use the word support, but more belief that they can make decisions on their own. As a matter of fact, they opened before any other school. They want to model the idea of opening before any other school in October. So they started 2 weeks early because they wanted to do that and they had the ability to do so and they were supported to do so. So it has allowed some notion of autonomy and innovation. One of the reasons why charter started is because faculty and staff don't really believe that they have autonomy and it can be innovative. So from a data perspective, I don't have enough data to tell you that it's not going to ball out of the park. What I can tell you, anecdotal information, is that it seems to be the faculty at least has seemed to buy into it more than I would have thought before. But again, Ms. Jones, honestly, because of the pandemic, it's been very difficult to kind of say what kind of data that we could get from it. They just hired a data analyst that will be looking at data on a regular basis in conjunction with looking at data on a regular basis. So by the end of this year, we should have some more information. Ms. Jones obviously is the board representative on it, and she may even have a little bit more closer than I am to it because I know she has a lot of conversations with Mr. Hartman, but it's kind of preliminary data. We don't have enough information, but it seems the faculty has bought into it at both of the schools at this point in time.
Okay, so I guess when we're talking about new schools and consolidation, or is this going to be the theme of the schools that are going to be reconfigured to make them more successful? Because even when my children were young, I was always looking for different type of programs that I thought were going to make them successful. And just say, for instance, just like back again at Northwest was a pretty empty looking school and it never looked like it had a lot to offer in the community. And so when you talk about the new schools, they're going to have a full-time nurse, counselor, and all those things. That's nice, but the programs that you offer, are they really going to draw the people there? Because if you build a good ship, they will come. I mean, that's just the bottom line for me. As a parent, I would be looking for, what are you really going to offer my child?
So, Ms. Jones, I think you have asked an excellent question. One of the challenges that we have had historically has been a real staffing challenge. Mr. St. Omer and I have had constant conversations around this notion of staffing. When you have 68 different buildings or 72 different buildings, it is very difficult to have adequate staff to support every single school. We obviously don't pay the highest salary in the region, and so it makes it incredibly hard to recruit people. We will have 299 positions available as a result of the school closures. My belief and hope is that we will be able to fill some of these outstanding vacancies that exist in our schools. And frankly, I'm giving you 10 schools. I could have made a recommendation for 20 schools very easily, very easily. But the challenge in that would be that I would take some neighborhoods would not have any schools. It would have been very easy to make a recommendation for 2 schools that were, one of them where one of the persons sitting at this table was a principal because the numbers are low. But if I did that, I would take away, to Mr. Lang's point, there would not be any neighborhood school in that area. And that way, to your point, then it would be very easy for somebody to pop in to do that. So to answer your question, but my hope and belief is that with additional dollars and programs and staff, we could possibly address the issues that you're framing, because many of our schools, even today, don't have full-time staff. They don't. And I'm not hiding behind a boulder. We've had this conversation before. The reduction of schools will assist us by making sure, or at least the belief is, that we can make sure that we have enough staff to adequately support every one of our schools. That is not happening right now. That is not happening. At the beginning of the year, at one of our premier schools, the principal was teaching math because the teacher left a week before school started.
Dr. Adams, this is the last thing I want to say, though, really. It's a shame that the city of St. Louis has not been more proactive in helping this school district become successful. Because, I mean, everything that they have done has really helped to deteriorate the St. Louis public schools. And I'm really looking forward to more of our elected officials to step forward and to really give more assistance than they have been giving, because we really need that help. Our students, our families need that kind of support, and they have not been supportive. Look at this. We are gentrified right now because of what the city has done. So I'm really looking forward to and the people who are running for mayor, I'm looking forward to you talking about our schools and what you're going to do. Thank you.
So I'll give you a number, Ms. Jones, because I think it's an important point that you're making. And I'll just give you a number because I think having information is helpful. In North St. Louis, there are 86,684 residents. In South St. Louis, there are 156,288 residents. In Central City, the Central Quarter, there are 58,833 residents. And so when you talk about this notion of gentrification, we didn't end up this way today. There's been a long-term equity issue as resources are divested from North St. Louis such that it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And so part of the conversation that Ms. Jones asked about not having North Side schools is because we don't have as many residents in North St. Louis. It's a fact. It's not something I made up. It's not something that this board did. It has been over a period of time that this has occurred. This is not all of a sudden happened. It happened over a period of time. So the data is clear that, to your point, that resources have been divested away from an area of the city. And obviously we bear the brunt of what we're doing tonight or talking about tonight because that has occurred. Those are facts. We can't walk away from facts. We can have opinions all day and all night, but at the end of the day, the facts speak for themselves that there are less residents in North St. Louis than there are in South St. Louis. Why? I think we can make some assumptions why.
Dr. Adams, I have a question regarding the schools that will possibly receive in other students. For instance, and this is just as an example for Ashland School, they'll receive students from Farragut and then also Ford School. So will those teachers transfer from those two schools into that building? And then if they do, will they have their own safe spaces to teach, an own classroom to teach? And then will there just be one principal in that school?
The intent right now is just one principal. We would always like some of the staff from the schools that close to go to schools where students are, and they have to be folded into the school. But again, that's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but the hope and belief is one principal, one leader, and this faculty will become part of that school. It's easier to do at the elementary level, harder to do at the high school level. At the elementary level, we have never had an issue with this happening. At the high school level, it's a little bit more nuanced. That's why we're going to survey kids to determine what schools they're going to go to and how to best support them. In my conversations with principals, today it is likely at the high school level, we may allow some principals to transition with kids for a period of time such that they can be a supportive piece for them at least for 1 year. So those are some things we're thinking about to try to make that transition a lot easier. But at the elementary level, no, there will be one school all in one building.
So will all of the teachers have the opportunity to be transferred to the school, and will anybody in the administration be displaced?
I indicated we have 299 persons. We have more than enough vacancies to
Yeah.
accommodate everybody. Plus, with adding retirements in it, as we've closed schools in the past, Ms. Jones, we've never gotten rid of staff. Principals have a contract, so they're a little bit different. But and I had a conversation with every principal today to make them aware of what the recommendations were going to be, so they won't be surprised. But I can indicate that I believe strongly that every staff person will have an opportunity for employment.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Adams.
Dr. Adams, two questions and then I'll pass. The first one is around renovation. So we have a list of all the schools here and the cost of renovation. So are we actually going to renovate or spend those dollars to renovate the schools?
No, sir, that is not the intent for this particular recommendation. It will be our recommendation to this board to contemplate a bond issue at some point in time such that you can make some decisions. Normally, bonds are used to renovate buildings, never GOB, because it would be, you wouldn't have a GOB because it's very expensive. So you try to get bond dollars, as occurred 12 or 14, 10 years ago, to get a $150 million bond for renovations. And I think that's something that this board needs to contemplate as soon as we get past this point.
Okay, so I think that's something that definitely would need to be added to the proposed plans, and maybe that's an FCAT review of schools that are heavily consolidated or we're anticipating population swings. Second question, I guess along the same lines as Susan. So for the first item on the upgrade plans, we have an upgrade specialist. Could you tell us more about what that is? I'm particularly thinking about, says all students are going to be assigned an upgrade specialist. Is this a district employee? Is this someone from the school? If it's a district employee, does this person know the school I'm coming from, going to? Do I, as a student or parent, have a relationship with this person? I just want to know the effectiveness of a quote unquote upgrade specialist in this scenario.
So at the last meeting, I provided a white paper that had that as, I think, page 3 or 4, and it kind of laid out what they would be doing. But frankly, Mr. Lang is somebody who can assist families to help them to transition, to deal with the paperwork, the registration. The intent right now is that it's a combination, that we're looking to hire some part-time persons to do it, as well as some of our own district recruitment staff. I had a conversation with them on yesterday by Zoom, 5 or 6 persons who are likely going to be in that role. They will be presenting to me the total plan, which I reviewed a little bit of it in the conversation with them. So it will be like a 1-to-20 ratio, Mr. Lang, so that at the high school level, it's going to be a lot easier, but at the elementary and middle school level, especially with us being in this pandemic, with families not being in school, we're going to have to knock on doors. We're going to have to hold hands to get people to the right place. So it's about a 1-to-20 ratio right now is what we're looking at. Some families are going to be easier to transition than others. The sooner the board makes the recommendation, the sooner the board makes a decision, the sooner we can start as early as over the Christmas break to start having conversations with families such that we can get a report in terms of how many have decided to do this. We did this at Langston and Co-Brilliant, and we had about a 90% retention of our student body by walking through every detail with these families to try to make sure we kept every single kid. So I'll refer you back to the white paper that I provided at the last meeting and send you another copy of it because it kind of lays out all of the things that the upgrade specialist will be doing.
Thank you. And I don't think I have any more questions as of yet, but I will say along I'll just suggestions because I guess they go away from governance. With the AP and elective courses, I would either specify to say which high schools those would be offered at, or just make it all high schools.
I apologize. I should say all. Yeah, it is offered at all high schools. The intent is that we will increase electives or AP courses at all high schools.
All right, excellent. And then along Donna's point, thinking about the city of St. Louis and even just the non-governmental entities too, I'm thinking about number 10. So I think it's great to provide paid internships. I just wonder who's paying for it. And I don't think it's necessarily negative for the district to pay for that. But I think it is a shame if we don't have businesses and other entities that aren't willing to pay students for their labor and their experiences in the jobs that these companies say they want them to fill anyway. So I would just reconsider that. And then the last thing I'm thinking about is with number 8. I think that sounds great and it's definitely relevant to the current state of affairs that we're in, but I'm thinking about this list in totality and thinking about, do we have a priority list for this? Is this something that we want to make sure that all these things happen at the same time, because these things are going to cost money and resources? And I'm thinking about what makes sense to prioritize. So for example, and not saying that this is the recommendation, but if we didn't do number 8 immediately, what additional funds does not creating a K through 12 virtual school, what funds does that free up now to be able to maybe do the other 9 things and do later? And I'm not saying specifically for virtual, but if we think about this list in terms of just not 1 through 10, but a priority list as well.
So first of all, thank you for the feedback. As it relates to the internships, we do have a plan, Mr. Lang, that the district will support the paid internships, but we are hopeful that, to your point, that those internships cost a substantial portion of it can be picked up by businesses. We have a plan that has been reviewed in detail. Part of us not providing anything to you until January is for this to happen first before we do that. And I think you'll be very pleased with the work that has been done around that plan, because we've been talking about it for several months and have brought several people in that might assist in that area. So I think you're going to be pleased with the plan. As it relates to, I think we already covered advanced placement. The intent is that, Mr. Lane, that we do everything on this list. That based upon the board approving the superintendent's plan, that we have enough dollars to do everything on this list. Deviating from not doing everything on this list, then I can't do these things on this list. I'm not creating a priority. I'm saying if the recommendation is made and supported by this board, we look to do everything on this particular list. I do think, Mr. Lang, while I am not framing this as an operation issue, we do think that there will be some substantial improvement minimally around painting in some of our buildings that is not listed here. I'm always reluctant to take GOB dollars that are centered around supporting academic achievement and putting them into the renovation kind of dollars, and that's what bonds are for. So I hear you loud and clear around dollars to be used for operations. And so we'll go back and I'll talk to the operations team. But minimally, what I am thinking right now, as we've talked about this, is some robust painting plans in some of our buildings such that they can minimally look better for the public and for our student body as well. So I've taken all of your notes, at least my staff has taken all of your notes, and we'll take everything into consideration.
And I will say one more thing. I would hope that, again, for those paid internships, that the SLPS Foundation, I feel like that does fall under college and career readiness. And because they have such a limited scope in what they can use their dollars for, I would hope that that would be part of their plan and some funding that they'd be able to leverage for paid internships.
Jane Donahue and I have been in constant conversations. As a matter of fact, she just reviewed the final document and provided it to me after the Thanksgiving break. So yes, they are linked with the CTE department and Dr. Bender in that space right now.
Dr. Adams, as you spoke about the navigators for families, we have some family resource specialists, I think was a part of the presentation. Would that be a group of persons that can be used?
Yes,
I mean, they
ma'am.
know the families. And
Yes.
then we have folk who were laid off, who were family community specialists that we could possibly tap as well.
Thank you for that later recommendation. I forgot about that group, but the FCSs are a group that we will be utilizing in these 10 schools specifically. Yes, ma'am.
So to me, this plan, and in particular, these upgrade plans, looks like a real opportunity to revision the district and revision what we're offering to students. So I very much appreciate that the recommendations are centered around what's happening to students and what additional supports and academics and all of these things that we'll then be able to offer to the students and how that really is at the forefront of this plan. But I also think too, what many of my board members are saying is so accurate and relevant that this has to be part of a bigger conversation in a citywide conversation over the long term and well into the future so that we can continue revisioning. And I think this is a clear statement of us doing our part and putting students at the center and saying, these are the things that we're going to do. And some of the things that you're mentioning kind of as this next wave of the process with redrawing boundary lines is so important. But like Donna, I think it is shameful that this is something we're doing alone, and there isn't more of a big picture conversation. So I hope that in this next mayoral race, we will see education become at the forefront of the discussion, because it is so important to where we're going as a community as a whole. But this recommendation and the way that we will be realigning all of our resources to me shows our commitment to students and our ownership of the piece that we can control and what our duty and responsibility and even moral obligation is as a board in a district.
Dr. Adams.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm looking at the proposed upgrade plans, and I actually have a recommendation of something that I believe would be beneficial to this list, and that would be the upgrade to technology for this entire school district. Because although it is good that we'll have a full-time nurse physically in these school buildings, given the situation that we may still be in the midst of a pandemic, one of the most pressing issues that we have right now is our technology. I noticed that this week, and even having my child learn, that everything was kind of running slower because everybody was online this week. And so I think a great investment in that specific area would be good for us.
Thank you. That follows a recommendation from Ms. Fowler as well.
Okay.
Earlier this week, just to give you an update, we changed the firewall for security purposes, and so the last 3 days have been problematic. I talked to Ms. Vanoy today about the challenges of what we need to do to kind of correct that. But they made an upgrade, and that was one of the reasons why it's slow. But I will add that as one of the 10 things to make that number 11.
Thank you, Dr. Adams.
Dr. Adams, this is the very last thing, but this is so important. And I've been thinking about this for years because watching our students graduate, and I've been to many graduations, and our students, they're so proud and they have their diploma in their hand, but they lack something. When they go to college, we talk about college and career readiness, and that was the reason why number 10 is up there, the paid internship to help give our children that exposure to the work environment or to help them develop a skill set upon graduation. But financial literacy is so key to everything to me. That's just my personal opinion. From kindergarten through the 12th grade, that we already have something in place. All of our students have emails. They have their own that. And I don't know, I'm hoping that you can find a group of people that will help our students learn about financial literacy. So when they graduate, they will have a financial portfolio in one hand, and they will have a diploma in the other hand as well, and their skill set. Because so many of our students graduate, and the first thing they want is a credit card or what have you, and many of them do not understand how to handle finance. And I think this would be very much appreciated by many of our parents. Thank you.
Thank you. And you've told us that before, and I apologize for not being as detailed as we need to be around that, but I'll work with Ms. Dr. Knight around this issue again.
Dr. Adams, on the timeline slide, December
sir.
8th, virtual town hall and school closures. Is there a run of show or format for how that will go and how this board members should prepare to, I guess, either respond or not respond, or?
Yes, that was forwarded to the board president, I think about a week and a half ago, if I'm correct. We
Yeah, it
will,
was sent out to the board.
yeah, and so we will update it because I think Dr. Roberts had a couple of questions, and I think Ms. Viles had a couple of questions as well. So we'll send you the new one tomorrow because we tweaked a couple of things in light of the technology challenges and some other things. So I'll send everybody a copy tomorrow because we're still playing with it. I just want to confirm that it is going to take place, board president, next week at the time period. So we indicated, which is 6 or 6:30. What time is that?
I'm sorry, 6:30, since that's our regular
Okay,
start time.
so
That way,
6:30,
that's it.
I'll send you an update tomorrow. I'll send the whole board an update tomorrow in terms of the part you play, what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do the chats and all of that.
Dr. Adams, only because Donna said it, on the paid internships for high school seniors, and in light of what Donna said about financial literacy and someone who teaches financial literacy classes, I would maybe, if you may think about changing this from just paid internships for seniors, but more of a financial readiness program, which can include internships. But I think that financial management is so important to people. And I've taught young people, high schoolers and things like that. And there is a real lack, because one thing I've learned having hired interns from high schools, when they get the money, they start focusing only on the money instead of the lessons they're learning at the job. So I would maybe rephrase this from just paid internships to some kind of financial literacy program, which can include the money, because you'd have to know how to spend the money as well.
No, thank you. I think I like the terminology, just to give you a peek into our thinking, because the document is still being worked on, is that the first half of the year, students will be in class, learning the soft skills and getting the financial literacy piece, and they actually won't do the paid internship until the second half of the school year. That is what we're thinking. And you don't do the second half of the school year unless you do well in the first half.
Excellent.
And that will be for seniors. So that's the plan right now. And we have an outside partner that wants to work with us on this because we know it's more than one class. It's a whole curriculum that has to be followed. And the financial literacy component is going to be a part of that. And they have to, quote unquote, pass it to get to the next phase, which is not coming to school in January and being on the job for 4 or 5 hours and getting paid a check that they can bring back home. But if this passes, obviously, we'll come back to the board in January with the entire plan because it'll be wrapped into our budget.
That was actually what I was going to ask next, is if the plan is, the recommendation is approved, will we then get more specificity around what's happening to students and what specific upgrades are happening at the receiving schools?
So the intent is, once the board says yes, hopefully on the 15th, we'll be working over the Christmas, I'll take that back, the winter break, to put in place what you see here. We've already started working on some things softly, not hardly, because I want the board to say yes. And in the January board meeting, we'll give you a preliminary update. At the work session, I think we'll have much more detail for you. School by school detail. The challenge for us, as a case, I think the board knows, is because of the nature of the virus and the uptick in cases, we will still be making some decision about if seniors and sophomore, middle and high school kids coming back to school in January, on January 4th. So that's still the plan right now today. I'm meeting with the medical professionals tomorrow at 8 and 9, and then with the legal team at 2:30 to look at the recommendations for next week and also for January as well.
This is Natalie again. Dr. Adams, I had, I guess, a comment and a question. This is all sounding really great as a wish list for our students, and being able to provide this across the district, the increased electives and internship opportunities and everything else that we are adding to upgrading buildings. Are we going to be able to cover all of this with the cost of the school closures, or are we anticipating any budget shortfalls later on? Is this something that basically, is it something that we're going to be able to sustain to continue to deliver to all of our students?
Ms. Val, could you repeat it one more time? I think you lost connection for a while.
Sure, I'm sorry, I'm having some internet problems. I was just saying that this sounds like a really good wish list and a lot of really good outcomes for electives and building upgrades and internships. Are we anticipating that the money saved from the consolidations those monies are going to be able to sustain these programs? Are we anticipating any budget shortfalls, or is this something that we can offer and continue to offer long-term to support our students, not just now, but all of those who are incoming?
The short answer is yes. The question relative to budget shortfalls, I think everyone that deals with public education is concerned about what happens with property tax long term. So I think for the not too distant future, we feel comfortable, board and public and Ms. Files, that we can sustain these programs. But we were not aware that the governor had to cut budget money last year twice, in June and July. And so there will always be those kinds of things that we don't control. But based upon what we see right now today, the answer is yes, we think we can sustain these programs.
Thank you.
Dr. Adams.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if Natalie was saying something or not.
Oh, she finished.
Okay, thank you. My last questions are, how would this support teachers? And will there be an opportunity with the school consolidations or closures to support them financially, more financially?
It was one of the items on my list, but we are presently in negotiations with the union at this point in time. So I don't want to say any more than that at this point in time in the public arena.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Adams.
Mhm. Thank you, board. Thank you.
So Dr. Adams, if you don't mind, I want to make sure that we're clear on what your ask is for the school visit sheet that you have here. You want us to, can you elaborate a little?
So I just want you to simply check the schools you want to see. We'll prioritize those schools as schools that the majority of the board wants to see. You may not want to see all of the schools. Again, I'm not sure if you want to see all closed schools that are red, or you might want to see other schools in black. So that's why I'm asking you to tell me what you want. We will set up after I get this list. I know we have our Wednesday meeting tomorrow. We'll finalize that and get all the details out to the board. I'm assuming that the board wants to travel together on an open bus with the windows open, such that we can deal with the virus issue, but the intent is to have a bus that will bring us to all of the schools. That's the intent right now, unless I hear otherwise from the board.
I'm going to follow the bus. Where should I meet, though?
I'll get some more details after we
Okay.
meet tomorrow. We could coordinate this any kind of way you want in terms of you traveling there on your own, and we coming up with a time or doing the bus. But if you could put that on that sheet and put your name on it, that would be helpful to me as well. That will help me to plan. If you're going to handle your own transportation or the district transportation, that would be easy for me to kind of handle and navigate.
And just as a point of clarity, Dunbar is not red on this list, but it should be.
That is an error. I apologize.
Right,
That should
so
be-
on
yes,
this one.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It should be
It was
red.
correct on this slide. I wanted to make sure that.
Yes, oversight on my part. Thank you.
So we will send out tomorrow night additional information, like logistic information on the tours. So make sure you put your preference for transportation here. And then there was one other about the updated information about the virtual town hall. We'll make sure to get that to you by the end of the day tomorrow as well. If there are other things that you need, please let me or Dr. Adams know so we can make sure that's included in your packet, or if there are specific things about school tours that you want to make sure are included, please let us know and we will work to make that happen. Other comments or discussion? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
Ms. Bell?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Bowell,
Yes.
Ms. Rhoda
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
we're adjourned.